Welcome to everybody, and we are ready to go live. Really wonderful having you all here. You're joining Unlock the People-Centric Leadership Approach to Sales Success. So in the next 25 minutes, myself and my gorgeous guest, Andy Champion, will discuss people-centric leadership. Now, please do connect with us in the chat I'm posting now. You'll see our links. Do connect with us, and also make sure that you post your questions here. We really are here for you. So if you're CEO, sales leader, a sales rep, wherever you are in your sales career, make sure you post your comments and questions here. Now, some of you that have been following these lives for a while, you'll notice that Andy has been here before. On the 15th of April, we discussed AI sales mastery and how to turbocharge your go-to-market strategy. And so we will be talking about this again in our next live session, which is on the 10th of June. We really felt we needed a session just to deep dive further into AI, generative AI, and the impact on sales and the future of sales. So make sure that I'll leave the links later on in the show, but make sure that you join us for that session. Anyway, for this session, we're talking about people-centric leadership. And so, Andy, I thought, first of all, what I should do is make sure that we define what sales leadership is and what people-centric leadership is. And it's about a style of leadership that prioritizes the well-being, development, and success of individuals within an organization. Instead of focusing solely on the tasks and the outcomes, people-centric leadership understands that the team is core to the success. It's the greatest assets, and treats the whole kind of culture of the organization with that in mind. So it really fosters trust and respect and open communication and empowering employees. Now, these are things that we talk a lot about in sales. But actually, Andy, sales leadership is not really renowned for empathy, for open communication, for, talk about trust and respect, but we don't always find that within the culture. We say we need to do it to our customers, but not necessarily within the culture. So I don't know if you would agree with the definition or really have an opinion on whether my perception is, that I'm stating around sales leadership, whether you think it's true or whether you think that actually we've moved much further away from the perception of sales leadership.
So I'm going to start with the second question first, and then I'll come back to your definition. If anybody is listening to this, is watching us now or on a recording, and they are working for a leadership that is not empowering them, that is not developing them, that is not investing in them, remember that you have choice every single day whether you go to work in that environment for that leader or not. And as an individual, the most important person in determining the trajectory of your career is you. Do you have curiosity? Do you put time aside every week to invest in yourself? Much like you would if you go to the gym or you want to run a 10K or a 5K or whatever your thing is, you have to put time into it yourself. But after you, the next biggest determinant of your career is not the company you work for, although that can be helpful. It is your manager. So if you are working for somebody that is not investing in you, that is not developing you, that is not coaching you in a way that works for you, go find somebody that does. Go find somebody that cares. And when you are going through an interview process, you want to be asking your future manager for examples of how they are developing people in their team right now, and get them to give examples, because that is going to give you a really good sense of what their coaching style is and what you're walking into. Is it the culture? Is it the environment that is going to bring the best out in you? And everybody has that choice. So that's the second question first. To your first question in terms of the definition, I think you nail it, right? And when you think about people like Richard Branson, he was infamous for talking about how he always invested in getting the best people possible in his company. His priority wasn't his customers, it was to get the best people possible, because he knew that by getting the best people possible, they would consequently, all other things being equal, deliver the best customer experience, a differentiated customer experience. So for the leaders on the call, that is our opportunity. Our sales results are delivered through our people, our customer retention, net retention, gross retention, our products, everything that a company does at some point is delivered by an individual. And so putting those individuals first, having a diverse group of individuals who have different points of view, and then creating a culture in which all of those voices are heard, I think functionally, practically, that's what great leadership looks like.
Yeah, love it, love it. We're going to pick up more on coaching, but I just wanted to kind of celebrate your point on coaching, that coaching is a two-way street. And if you're demonstrating that you're coachable, you want to make sure that your manager can coach as well. And it's really important in the recruitment situation to actually identify that, because you don't want to get recruited and actually find that your manager is not a good coach. If you're a coachable person, you're in the wrong space. So if you can do that early, then I think that's an excellent point. But I really wanted to pick up on the how to implement a people-centric sales leadership culture. And you, when we were talking previously, mentioned about there's perhaps 3 particular areas that you thought would be of value to talk about: autonomy and accountability. And your definition of the job of a leader is not to be the smartest person in the room, which reflects what you said about Richard Branson. And then we'll pick up more on coaching. So talk to me more about those 2 elements in particular.
I think if we start at the top, when you think about being people-centric, it's a conscious decision. We can choose to do it or not. And a little bit like salespeople, sales leaders, none of us are born as great, or very few of us are born as great coaches. And like any other skill in life, great coaching comes from practice, from learning, from looking at proven frameworks. Like, for example, I love the situational leadership framework. It helps you think about where different people in your team may be for a discrete skill or a discrete task. Are they experts in it and really need facilitation? Or is this the first time they are doing it and they need quite clear direction? And there are a couple of phases in between. But that situational leadership framework is one that I came across fairly early in my career, and I still use to this day. It allows me to frame the level of input I might give to an individual. Also, when you think about a big part of coaching, another big part of that is being able to provide feedback. Feedback is such a fantastic gift. I love it. The sort of feedback I really relish is constructive feedback. The sort of feedback actually that when it says, great, well done, you did a fantastic job. I don't know why I still to this day, it's like fantastic. I really am grateful, but can we get to the stuff how I can improve? And that's just, one of my failings. But the SBI framework is a fantastic way for those people that may be listening to this that feel that they might want to take the next step on providing feedback to their people and their colleagues and their manager. It's a really nice way of isolating a behavior that you've observed, providing a specific example of it, and then getting curious to understand the other person's perception of it. And it's called the SBI framework. So situational leadership and SBI, but like anything in life, it's a conscious choice. We as individuals can choose whether we wish to empower and elevate our people, or we can take a different approach that requires us to be in their business every single day, to micromanage everything they do. And ultimately, I found that for me, at least, I wasn't good enough to do that. But what I was okay at was providing people with a culture into which they felt empowered. They lent in, and they lent in. And the way I knew that was through something called discretionary effort.
Okay, you've mentioned quite a few terms here that people listening might not be familiar with. So we talked about situational leadership. We talked about, the coaching strategy for feedback. And, I just want to take a little bit step back, because you have a background coming from an army training where it's all about the team. Now, many other people haven't had your experience. And so if they're coming into leadership, we know in sales that people are often promoted on performance. And I think we've said this previously, that the best performers aren't necessarily the best managers. But if they've not had an experience like yours, where it's all about the team, where you may look for these frameworks and strategies to develop yourself because you love feedback to know what you can do better. If you've not come from any of that background where you see any kind of feedback as a criticism, where you haven't had the kind of leadership experience to know what is a good team leader, where do you start?
I think the analogy I would draw would be with athletes of whatever type, right? From those that compete on the track, to in the pool, to on the back of horses, on boats. And actually you can get so far with natural talent. But the thing that really accelerates is having a coach. So find a coach, find a mentor, ask people in your network who they know that could help you. And it's one of the simplest things that you can do. Not last week because I was traveling, but 2 weeks ago. I'm relatively new to my role. And one of the things I'd spoken about with some of my leaders was whether they have mentors outside and inside of 6 Sense. And a couple of them didn't. And they happened to be very capable female leaders. I, as you know, have tried to be a fantastic ally, particularly to women in technology, for about a decade-ish, maybe a little bit more now. And so for me, it was then very easy to make an introduction to a couple of other fantastic female leaders that I know that can now talk to them. And it's not a big commitment for a mentor. It's maybe one conversation a month, maybe one conversation a quarter. But again, this is something where, whether it's developing yourself as a coach, as a leader, or another aspect of the skills that you need to succeed, go and find somebody, ask, get curious, look up, for example, the SBI framework and situational leadership. There is a load of information out there via the internet that can get you started. But speak to people who've been successful. Go out of your way to connect with them. Go to events where you're going to meet others, and just get curious. Because I've always found when you stop and ask somebody, Janice, can you help me? Very rarely has somebody turned around and said, no, sorry, I'm out of here. So go ask. Find yourself a couple of mentors.
I love that. So there was one aspect, accountability and autonomy. Now, I often go into sales organizations and talk to managers and leaders, and you often find managers that are completely overrun and frazzled, and they will coach by telling rather than by asking and getting people to think for themselves, because it's the quickest and easiest route to actually get them to do what you want them to do. But actually they're creating a rod for their own back. So often, in the question that I do, it's to work to get them to see that they're training people to be dependent in the strategies that they're using. So How do you go about the autonomy and accountability in order to create an environment where people take ownership?
I think there are a couple of really simple words that you can start a sentence with that will help you start to transition from that. And trust me, right? If you could see my body, you would see the scars, because like many other people, I have made so many mistakes in my career. I just have been round the sun a few more times than maybe some people that aren't quite as old as me. But I've made mistakes. I've got it wrong. One of the first mistakes I made when I was a first-time manager was I thought part of my job was to, be a pal, a friend to my colleagues. And I'm not saying I don't want to do that. What I am very clear on now is that my job actually, to get the best of them, is to earn their respect, is to earn their trust. And Colin Powell talked about the only currency that matters in leadership is trust. Anyway, so what can you do? The first thing is to realize that it's not your job to tell people what to do their job for them. It is your job to help them do it better. And so starting questions with, interesting, what do you think the options are? How do you think we might go about this? What have you looked at already? And which of the options is the one you're leaning toward? So get curious, ask the questions. And it is so tempting, especially when time is tight, to give them the answer. But I would say a little bit like when you're playing Monopoly, right? That get out of jail free card, pretty rare. You don't want to use it every time you go around the board. So sometimes you will need to do that. And that situational leadership will, I think, provide an important framework in terms of when you need to give direction. And that's typically when somebody is very inexperienced and has not done that task before, versus when you can actually start to explore. And here's the thing. When you start to ask questions of your teams and your colleague, you will uncover insights. You will uncover different ways that you haven't thought about as a leader of doing things. And then when you can put all of that together, usually you'll get a smarter, better, more effective result than you would necessarily have come up with yourself. So, it's good for the individual. It forces a level of accountability. And sometimes when you start it with somebody, they'll be like, well, I haven't thought about it. And it's like, that's okay. Let's work through that together. What do you think some of the options could be? But resist that urge as much as you possibly can to say, Janice, here's how you should run the LinkedIn live session with Andy, because Andy doesn't know how to do these things very well.
Yeah, there's so much ego that's in sales, and a lot of that is the center of all of this, isn't it, really? You want your team to be like you, to do it like you, and you want them to be successful like you, but actually you're not really helping them to be their own success rather than yours. And I think what you said, it's from an individual, but it's also from a whole entire sales operation, because coaching serves the entire operation. It's not just individual. It must be integrated into the culture, as you've said, from hiring to management into leadership. And the stats are that this comes from LinkedIn. The global LinkedIn sales program supported these results and found that sales reps obtain quota at an average rate of between 22 and 26% higher than non-coached peers. And there's lots of other stats around, the sales operation and how continuous development and coaching really does improve not only the sales results, but the tenure and lifetime contributions of the sales reps. So if you do not have a coaching culture, we know that from OMG's stats that a formal sales coaching strategy will enable your team to reach 91% of quota attainment, which is better than the kind of 80 and below. So if you do not have that culture, where do you start? What do you need to do? Do you start with the leaders and managers, or the other way around? Is it top down or bottom up?
The experience that I've had, and it's just my experience, it doesn't make it right, but it's just what I've seen, is that those organizations that cascade programs through their leaders are the ones that usually land those programs, whatever that change may be, right? It could be process change. It could be, in this case, a change to move to a more coaching-centric, people-centric approach. The organizations that try and force it from the ground up, it struggles, because actually, when I am in work, like any leader, every word, every action I take, wherever I spend my time, people take conscious and unconscious signals for that. And so if I show an interest and a commitment, and if I inspect stuff, guess what? It usually happens. If, for example, you're in an environment where leadership doesn't care about a particular program or a particular initiative, people will take a very strong unconscious, subconscious feeling from that. And it's like, oh, that's not important. So I'll sort of, I'll gloss over it. I'll do what I need to, right? Sales certifications. Oh my goodness. I used to hate them, right? Because it's like, you get to go in, you record a video, you upload it, and maybe you get feedback, maybe you don't. And if you get feedback, it was kind of surface level. And at that point, I'm like, well, why am I doing this? And so this is why it's so important for us as leaders to lead by example. And one of the challenges I set myself a couple of years ago was to invest 20% of my time into coaching my team and my peers and my colleagues. And it's something that a dear friend, Scott Edinger, and I talked about on a podcast together. And it stuck with me. And it stuck with me because I realized that by committing to that myself, I could little by little change our organization. Maybe I couldn't change all of it, but what I could do is change my contribution to it. And so for leaders on the call, we lead by example. For individuals, of course, it can be more challenging. And that's where helping shine a light on the massive benefits of coaching, I think, can help. But ultimately, if you meet a brick wall consistently and you cannot change it, then there is a question to be had in terms of, is that the right environment for you or not?
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. As you know, I'm an advocate for a data informed approach to, and it's sales specific, predictive, and verified. And this enables you to coach the individual, because we're aware that many managers haven't been trained on coaching. So what they do is they coach the deal and not the individual, because that's the bit they know. The individual, it's like this black box. And what this does, it provides you with the data on that individual and how to get them into the top quartile, and what you do need to coach to their strengths and what you don't need to coach. It gives that black box, it makes it into a crystal ball, so you can really see inside of the individual. And it also helps the individual to see their own strengths as well. So whether that's from a hiring or an existing team's point of view. So managers, what do you do? You're setting an example, but is there training that you put them through in order to coach, or is it by your example that you enable another manager to do as you have done?
It's a bit of both. It's a bit of both, right? None of us are perfect. We're all getting better. I remember in a one-to-one 3 weeks ago now, I was providing some feedback, and I sort of figured out the example I was going to use, leveraging the SBI framework. And then we kind of ran out of time. And what I should have done was to pause and say, hey, let's pick up on this next time, or let's get some time later on this week. But no, it's a bit like, well, you're in a presentation, you've got to get through your slides, right? And I made the error, and it was like, and it was compressed, and it didn't go quite as I wanted it to. So, the reality, we're all learning. We all benefit from external feedback. That's why I talked about getting a mentor. If you can't get a mentor, which I think most people can, ask your colleagues for feedback. How can I get better? Ask your people. hey, we've been working together for a while. Coaching is an area that I want to develop. Could you share some observations with me on some areas that I might want to focus on? There's a lot of online content out there, but also, there are people in your organization. So yes, we can drive a lot of it ourselves and we can ask for feedback to accelerate that. But also, I do think it's important for an organization to commit to the development of their leadership. And actually, I would argue that development of first line leaders is probably one of the most important things that a go-to-market organization can do, because every single one of those first line leaders is the first place where between 5 and 10 individuals might go to get advice in their day-to-day work. So that's where you get your leverage.
Excellent. Okay, so as we wrap up, I just wanted your opinion on the AI tools. There's so many of them about coaching AI tools. Is it a substitute for human coaching? Is it as good? Is the feedback as good as, having a live person? What's your opinion, Andy?
Well, a couple of things, and we could do a whole session just on that, and we might well be. But I would say that we're all getting wrapped up with AI, but at the end of the day, it really is as good as the data and the algorithms that sit behind it. There isn't that sort of level of AI yet that matches the human intellect. We're probably not far from it, but we're not there yet. So I would say that right now, generative AI is a complement, and it is an additive to that human engagement. It does not replace it any more than it does in sales. But what it does do really well, is it can take large amounts of data, it can compare it against rubrics, against patterns of what we define as the behaviors that we want, and then it can provide specific feedback against that. So, there are enablement platforms out there that are doing that right now that are really good at it. But as a leader, my job is to contextualize that and to bring that human element of the delivery to the individual, and then to work with them on a plan to help them improve in those areas. So it's a data point. It augments. We're nowhere near at a stage where it replaces, in my opinion.
Well, we've come to the end, and I just want to let all the listeners know the next session that we have on. So the next session is with Laurie Richardson, and we're going to be talking about sales leadership again, but giving 3 particular strategies of what leaders really need to know now. But also our session, Andy, is on the 10th of June. Have I got the right one? No, the wrong one. It is the 10th of June. And no, I've still got the wrong one. It is so
we really are doing it on the 10th of June.
Oh my gosh. So this says the date is wrong. I haven't changed June. So this is definitely the 10th of June. This is the title, Mastering AI in Sales. And we're really going to delve a lot deeper into chatbots and all of the details around AI. And I'm going to make sure that we've got some people on there asking you questions, because I want to see you grilled, Andy, grilled this time.
Love it.
So yeah, that's on the 10th of June. So have you got any closing remarks here?
I think I come back to a couple of things. I would say for the individual contributors, for all of us on the call, we owe it to ourselves to work for brilliant people who amplify and help us advance towards whatever goals as individuals that we have. And for those of us that perhaps are in the privileged position of leadership, we have a deep duty to develop the individuals around us. And when we do it that well, life doesn't become easy, but it becomes a damn sight less difficult. So invest in your people. They are the most cherished resource you have, and the good ones will never, ever let you down.
Excellent. Well said, Andy. Thank you very much for being a guest. And I look forward to seeing you on the 10th of June for our AI session.